What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Sniper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we begin our talks on the Druid, everyone's favorite shapeshifter, lover of nature, all the fun things, but how has it fared in the transformation of the 2024 rules? We're going to take a look at that today. Before we do, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, share the video with your friends, and of course click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. The Druid has been a favorite for a very long time, right? Turn into a beast. You have amazing spells. You've got some really cool versatility. Of course, you know, most people really like the Moon Druid, but there are some awesome other uses for your wild shapes and that kind of thing. And it's a ton of fun. However, it has definitely seen some major changes going into the 2024 rules. It's pretty significant, actually. So we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump in after I mention one little thing. For those of you who've been keeping up with the channel for a little while, you will know that my wife is pregnant and has been for a while. She is very close to no longer being pregnant. We are very close. In August, we are due. So I'm going to attempt to try to pre-record some things to make sure at least that the Druid stuff will be coming out at normal time. I'll schedule that out, make sure it comes out at the regular times. However, I don't know when we will move on past that to fighter. I will just depend on when I can have time and enough, a little bit of sleep here and there. So we'll see, but there will probably be a hard break after Druid if I can go ahead and get everything pre-recorded. Obviously leading up to everything that may get in the way, and so I'm going to try. We will see what we can do, but we will get through this. We got through it the first time, and we will get through it again. So thank you all so much for your patience in that. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So the Druid, like I said, has seen some really major changes, and it starts off right at level 1, right? There are quite a few things that have changed here. So before we even jump into features, I haven't really even been doing this with my other classes, of talking about things that are just what come with the class, right? So before, in 2014, we had this restriction on Druids, which most people homebrewed out of the class, but this restriction that they would not use anything that is metal. That is gone now, which makes perfect sense to me. However, there are a couple nerfs in there as well. So we now only get simple weapons. We did get a big list of weapons, and so now it's just simple weapons, which is easier to keep up with, I guess. But there are a couple on there that I would have liked to have kept, but oh well. We also no longer get medium armor proficiency. That's kind of a big deal. I don't like losing that, although it was kind of weird that we got medium armor proficiency before but couldn't use any kind of metal, so that was really restrictive in what it is that we were allowed to use. So definitely weird, and so we're already starting off on the wrong foot. However, it's fine. We'll make do here in just a minute. We can kind of fix this. We're still a prepared caster. Moving on to the spell casting. Of course, there are new spells and new different things that are added in there. That will be discussed more in depth when we get to the builds, of course, when we're actually applying the spells. But just know that there are some new spells in here, some new cantrips, new actual leveled spells, and for the most part, there's not anything that I'm super bummed about in the spell list. For the most part, I think it retains pretty much what it needs to. I don't have any huge issues. There's no standout things like with spiritual weapon and that kind of thing. That's really not present here. So let's jump in. Level 1. At level 1, we normally would get Druidic, and of course we still get that here. Of course, that's always been the secret language of Druids and that kind of thing. The only real difference here is that we also now just get Speak with Animals for free. That's about it. Besides that, it's about the same as what it was before. And of course, if you haven't seen my 2014 ranking, I'll put that up in the iCard above so you can kind of compare. I'm going to be doing just comparing it to what everybody knows in the 2014 rules. But if you're not familiar with those, that is in that video. So make sure to check that out if you're unfamiliar. So next we get a brand new feature, which is called Primal Order. This is very similar to the Cleric, and you're going to notice that they do this a few times. It's very weird because they took a lot of what makes the Cleric a thing and just gave it to the Druid too. Feels a little lazy, in my opinion, that we're just taking what the Cleric already had and then gains again and just giving it to the Druid. Weird.
Weird.
I don't know. But so, yeah, we get Primal Order, which is very similar to what we had before on the Cleric, which I'll throw that up in the icard above as well for the Cleric. Yeah, super weird. But we get two choices here. We get Warden, which again is the old protector thing that we got with the Cleric. Super weird. But martial weapon proficiency, and we get medium armor. Cleric got heavy armor. We get medium armor. I mean, it's fine. I'm very happy getting the martial weapon proficiency. The medium armor is at least better, but remember, we got this before. In 2014, we had this already. So it's weird having to take this feature to get it back. Especially when you have Magician as the other option, which is an extra cantrip, and you can add your wisdom modifier to Arcana and Nature checks. Definitely makes sense. This is in addition to your intelligence modifier, so it's not replacing it. So that's good. You're going to be even better than the wizard at Arcana checks most of the time, depending on your stats. So that's interesting. But, you know, nothing crazy here. Again, it's new. It's copy and paste from the Cleric pretty much, but I'm not necessarily against it. Now we get to Wild Shape. All right, Wild Shape, of course, is the flagship feature of Druids, allowing you to transform into a beast of some kind. This got changed dramatically, pretty much. Yeah, this is the biggest change of anything, and we're here at level 2. This is a little rough. So one good thing is that it is now a bonus action for everybody. It's not just a bonus action for Moon Druids and then those that are using things other than turning into a beast to do things on a bonus action. That's good. I'm all with that. This being an action, Wild Shape being an action, is horrible, and so that's a great change. However, we get some other things. One other slight buff here is that we were getting only 2 uses just throughout our entire career per long rest. Now that scales to 4 by the time we're level 17. So slight buff there. We get 3 pretty early on, and then we have to wait a little bit longer to get that 4th one, but still, that's fine, and you get to regain 1 on a short rest. So, okay, all right, we can work with that. Now it goes downhill. Now it goes very much downhill. You now have to choose 4 specific forms every time you take a long rest. And so it's not just, I choose X Beast, whatever. It has to be pre-chosen. So you're basically going to be preparing this like with your spells, which I don't like. Now, as far as the no flying speed and the CR restrictions, that's pretty much the same. So I'm not going to complain too much on that, even though I think it's super weak and I wish that it was better. It just, choosing only 4 forms is horrible because that's really going to limit you. Now, are you going to be using 4 forms in a day? No, probably not. But I would like the flexibility to be able to go with other things. Now, do most people get stuck in a rut and just do, direwolf over and over once you can do that? Yeah, some people do. But I would rather have that flexibility of not being just beholden to these 4 forms in case I want to do something weird, because then you're going to be really stuck, right? I need something that has like spider climb. I need something that's good in combat. I need something that's good for like recon. You're going to have to choose all of these things. And if you end up in one situation and you didn't bring the right thing, you're done. And that doesn't help. So I don't like that. That is a nerf. What's even more of a nerf is what comes next. And that is, we no longer take on the HP of the creature that we are transforming into. Instead, you're going to gain temporary HP equal to your druid level. This is horrendous. This is absolutely horrendous and stops us from being able to tank as a druid, which was the whole point, right? Is that you couldn't cast your spells, but you could get all this extra HP, and as long as you had that HP, you were good, you stayed in the form, you're good. All that's fine. Now, while it is now you have all of your normal HP before you are knocked out of the form, that is good, I guess, you don't get to re-up that and then just gain all that back. That really hurts the ability of the druid to tank all the hits, right? Now, of course, it's hard on DMs, and I understand that, but this was what really made the druid stand out, was the ability to just tank hits while concentrating on spells and having all this extra HP, you could be a frontline fighter and run in there. And so that really sucks. That's a huge nerf. Huge nerf. Of course, you can still concentrate on spells, but can't cast them at this level while in wild shape. But man, this is a huge nerf. Absolutely massive nerf. That hurts a lot. Moving on to Wild Companion. We got this in Tasha's, so it's kind of coming back. It's mostly the same. So the only difference now is that you can now also use a spell slot instead of only wild shape in order to cast Find Familiar. So opening that up, which is decent. And of course, now it lasts until a long rest ends rather than hours equal to half your druid level. So ultimately, that's a buff. Doesn't make up for wild shape, but ultimately that's a buff. And you'll notice that there is no subclass here at level 2. That's because all subclasses have moved to level 3, and so that's where we're at. We're not going to be talking about those today. Of course, we're going to be talking about those later on in the next 4 weeks, assuming I can get the videos out and everything. And that'll be Land, Moon, Sea, and Stars. So all of them got changed quite a bit. Sea is new, of course, and Stars is very subtle in its changes. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Land and Moon, those are pretty major, so we'll have a lot to talk about with those. Druid 4, we of course going to get a feat, same as before, and at Druid 5, we get a new feature called Wild Resurgence. This gives us a little bit more flexibility and reminds me a lot of meta magic, actually, when it comes to the Sorcerer. We basically can now trade Wild Shape for a first level spell slot. Okay, very cool. There's no action required. It's completely free. And you can do this once per turn. You can spend a spell slot to gain a wild shape use, or if you want to do it backwards, you can do that. However, that's only once per day, being able to gain a first level spell slot from wild shape. So can't do that a ton, but you can do that once per day, which could be helpful for sure. So I'm okay with that. Brand new feature. I like it. Very cool. At Druid 6, we get a subclass feature. That's the same as before. I also wanted to mention at this level that the OG Druid in 2014 had no class features between levels 4 and 17, which is kind of wild, right? You would get new spell levels, you would get a subclass feature, or you would get an ASI or feat. That's kind of wild. There is still a drought on the new Druid as well, but it's not nearly as big. Especially at level 7, we get another feature here, and that is called Elemental Fury. Again, a brand new feature. However, this is going to look very familiar. So you get to choose one of two options. Either Potent Spellcasting, literally the same name as the Cleric feature, but you add your Wisdom mod on Druid cantrips. Literally does the exact same thing. Then we get Primal Strike. It's Blessed Strike with the Cleric, but it is called Primal Strike here, and so it adds extra damage onto your attacks while you are within wild shape. So it's the same thing, but more restrictive, but it gives you a wider list of damage types. It can be cold, fire, lightning, or thunder, and of course can be once per turn. Definitely nice to have and helps out wild shape, because the issue with wild shape is that you are so restricted on those CRs, and while CR did get changed a lot, and we'll of course be talking about this during builds and things, but the CRs got changed a lot in the new monster manual. However, ultimately they weren't changed so much that I'm saying that this is this crazy thing. I do think that on the whole, what is included in this is probably an overall buff, at least for wild shape purposes. But still, the restriction on not getting the huge amount of HP, the full HP of the creature, really sucks. That really sucks. But adding to the damage is good. If you're going to be a dire wolf once you are able to, and dealing a little bit of extra damage, that's certainly nice. Again, the issue with this is that it stops scaling at level 8, and even at level 8, you're still only a CR1. This is really bad. You're gonna get absolutely demolished with this, because that was the whole thing that helped survivability of druids. Now you have no defense on that. You get a number of temp HP equal to your druid level. That's it. And so maybe it's not the best to be the dire wolf. Maybe it's not best to use your wild shape feature on just the stock use, and so that's really going to suck for some of these druids that don't have these specified uses, such as the Stars Druid. That's the Stars Druid, of course, gets the starry form, which is different. that form is still going to be just as good. And the Moon Druid, of course, has a different way of doing things. Those two are probably going to be just fine, although the Moon Druid did get nerfed in some ways too. But those two are probably going to be just fine. It's the others that I'm worried about that have to use this as a normal feature. Probably aren't even going to use it, or at least at the very least, you're going to stop using it at a certain point, because that temp HP is not enough of a reason to burn this and be stuck in a form that's not dealing a whole lot of damage and can't cast spells. So, not great. At Druid 8, we of course get another feat. Druid 10, subclass feature. Druid 12, feat. Druid 14, subclass. Again, see, there's a huge drought here, but it's smaller. It's from 8 to 14 rather than 4 to 17. So, At level 15 for Druid, we of course get improved Elemental Fury. Same thing that the Cleric gets, pretty much. So, although it works a little differently. So with this, the potent spell casting, if you took that the first time, now, all of your Druid cantrips that have a range of 10 feet or more, so no booming blades, nothing like that, but anything that has an extended range that is actually ranged, you can add 300 feet to that range. Pretty good, right? That's a massive range on a firebolt if you were able to get that as a Druid. But yeah, the range on these things is now huge, which is really cool. Druids do get some decent cantrips, I will say, so this will help. Will you use the full 300 feet a lot? Probably not, but certainly helps with the flexibility. But if you take Primal Strike, you double that extra damage. It's now 2d8 rather than 1d8. So that's probably what you're going to be taking a lot of the time. But again, at level 15, do I want to be a CR1 creature when I don't get the ability to tank things as well? And it just the damage isn't scaling. The damage is not scaling enough to where I find it to be worth it. Probably ever. And so that's just really, really tough. Druid 18, we did get Timeless Body here before, but that is now gone. It is now packed into Archdruid at level 20. So we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But we do get beast spells, and it's very similar to what it was there before. So you can cast spells while you're in wild shape, but you cannot use material components that are costly or are consumed. It's slightly better worded than what it was before, because it was basically that you couldn't manipulate things. It was a little muddy, I think. It's a little more clear with this now in that it specifies if the material components have a cost or they are consumed. This means that if there is a material component that is not costly or consumed, you can still cast the spell, but you would get some weird things with DMs where it is this weird like material component and you couldn't cast it, right? This takes away that restriction. So overall, that's a buff. It's a more clear and concise way of putting it. And so, yeah, very similar, but ultimately, I think it is slightly better. Druid 19, Epic Boons. Everybody gets that, so nothing really to talk about there. Finally, we get to Archdruid at level 20, and we've seen some pretty big changes here. Now, how many people are getting to Druid 20? Very, very, very few. So will this come up for anybody? Not a whole lot of people will deal with this, but it is still worth talking about because it is changed, and I don't like it. So before, we had unlimited wild shape. Fantastic. You ignored verbal and somatic components, and any kind of materials that are not consumed. Just do it, and that gets you around it. So that's cool. Essentially, that now comes at level 18 with the new version. So now with the new version, we regain 1 wild shape anytime we roll initiative. Okay, here's the thing. 1, are we using wild shape a lot at this point in combat? Probably not, because it's CR1. How often am I going to be using this in combat? Probably not a whole lot, because I don't gain a huge buffer of HP. I'm gaining 20 HP. That's it. Not the best. It's not a great trade-off, right? Even though I can cast spells now, all I'm doing is getting an extra 20 HP. That's it. So, if you've got a free bonus action, I guess because you can cast spells now, I guess that's fine, but the other thing is that you can now convert wild shape into spell slots, and it's more efficient than how it worked before. So it's now a 2 times multiplier. So if you use, let's say, 2 wild shape uses, it's now 4th level spell. So I guess that's better, and you can do that once per day. And then you also get the Timeless Body feature where you just age slower. So yeah, overall, this is a a nerf. It's a big nerf. I'm not very happy with where this went. Now, of course, I think there are a couple things to talk about here. One, we are now focusing a lot more on our spellcasting. I think that has to be the way that we think about this. Because of that, that means that Wild Shape, which is our main feature, I think is going to end up sitting in the background a lot of the time. Because to me, the inability to cast spells until you're level 18 with this feature is not worth the trade-off most of the time to be stuck in the form of, at best, a CR1 creature. Now, I do think that overall CR1 beasts are better than what they were previously. I do think on the whole things have improved. However, they also used to give you huge buffs to HP, and that is no longer the case. And that is a big, big deal. This used to be the way that Druids could set up something really good with concentration, run into battle, and be able to take hits like crazy. When it drops, you set it back up, and then you're good again, right? And you can tank this. And you were limited in your uses, and so that helped, right? That helped to kind of balance it. If you ran out, you had one more use for the day, and then that's it, right? Unless you used a short rest to get it back. It just doesn't. It's not great anymore. And I really feel like Wild Shape has become pretty useless now, at least for the most part. And I appreciate that they gave more uses of it, but it doesn't matter when it's not giving me that much of a benefit, right? The extra uses are just there to where I can just switch forms amongst my list of 4, right? And especially after I am getting access to more and more things, right? You get the access to the flying speeds. Once you get to level 8, of course, your CR level goes up. We lose the swim speed restriction, but still, who cares? I don't think that this is great for the class. You also lose out on proficiencies of basic things. Medium armor, of course, is now tied to a feature rather than necessarily the class itself. And so for Cleric, I think it's different because with Cleric, you can really go multiple ways with this. I don't think the Druid can really be treated the exact same way as the Cleric, and that's what they've done in this. They've copied and pasted a ton of stuff from the Cleric, and to me it just seems like poor design where I have been praising their design choices for 2024 up until this point. I said that the Barbarian was good, I said that the Bard was overall a nerf, but I understood it, and the Cleric overall was fine. I really can't get on board with this. I really think that the Druid was in a spot where maybe things could be adjusted, but I don't know that this was it. I think that we may have gone too far in the other direction. And so while the spell list is good, spell list is very good actually, and there are a couple of things that do buff it in some ways, and we get more features. So we have a slightly more satisfying progression. I think overall, this is not the most positive of changes. So unfortunately, where I gave this a 9 before, which to me is right in line with where you want to be. To me, a 9 is exactly what the game needs. A 9 is very strong, very well balanced, but not OP, right? 10 is OP, too much. I don't think I can give this a 9 anymore. I don't think that it is as strong as the other options. I don't think that it is to the point of saying it's as good as the Cleric. I don't think I can say that it's as good as the Bard. I don't think that I can say that. So at the very minimum, it has to drop 1 spot. I'm very tempted to drop it 2 spots, but because the spellcasting is so good, and because of the spell list being what it is, because of all of that, I don't think I can in good conscience drop it below an 8, but it has to drop to at least an 8. You may feel like it needs to drop more, and that's fine. And this may just be me taking it personally because literally we just finished Wild Beyond the Witchlight yesterday. As of day of recording this, we finished yesterday of Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I played a Druid, and so I may be taking this personally, and that's my own thing. But I really do not like these changes. I think that if you're gonna change wild shape, I think that there are ways to do it, just not like this, unfortunately. So I'm gonna quit ranting. I'm getting all into it because I really wish that Druid wasn't nerfed in this way, but it is what it is. It is still a passing grade, so I mean, it's not that this is crap. It's not that you shouldn't play it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just think that it's not nearly as good as it was in the 2014 version, and I don't think it's for the best. I'm not always going to be saying that nerfs are a bad thing. Some nerfs are good, but in this case, I don't think it's a good thing. So very unfortunate, but is what it is. Next week, we will be back with our first subclass, Circle of the Land, which has seen a ton of changes. It needed it really bad, and so we're going to be doing that. Then of course, Moon, Sea, and Stars. Very, very cool stuff. I'm very excited to start discussing those with you over the coming weeks. And until next time, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye bye.